Hello everyone. Have you ever wondered if you can beat Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet using only common rarity weapons and accessories? Me neither. But here we are. In this challenge I'll be relying solely on weapons and accessories of common rarity. No shop purchases, no upgrading allowed. Anything I come across that's common is fair game. So let's dive in and see how it goes. There's not much to say about the tutorial, it's exactly what you'd expect, a way to get you familiar with the basics. I mean, it's a tutorial for a reason, though I guess we kinda failed the challenge right here. Well, not really. The tutorial is the only part where the game forces you to use a weapon, and it's a common quality one at that. That's the only section where you can change your weapon, so I won't count it. But once the tutorial is over, it's all about using common weapons and accessories.
I'm going on an adventure!
Remnant Wasteland. The first zone which all players venture into. Mobs are low level and you're expected to be using a common or uncommon weapon. So this part of the run was easy. It went as expected. I just sprayed and prayed till everything was dead. Though I must admit, I was a bit intimidated at the thought of fighting the first boss. I was only level 4, I had only one weapon of common quality. Well, that was anticlimactic.
Look at this dude.
With high spirits from the victory over the first boss and my newly acquired common assault rifle, it was time to take on Basil Joe? This guy, the bastard who had the nerve to try and steal my girlfriend. Yes, my customizable Alpha Sis assistant is basically my in-game girlfriend, fight me. And this guy, absolute joke. I slapped him on the wrist, scolded him for trying to mess with me, and took him and his friends down with ease. But Joe clearly didn't learn his lesson. One slap wasn't enough, so I slapped him again. Oh, you didn't say anything. But Joe clearly didn't learn his lesson. One slap wasn't enough, so I slapped him again. Harder. After dealing with Joe, it was time to enter the second dungeon, Extinct Civilization Lab. Nothing about it was too challenging, just your standard level 10 mobs. By now, I had gained a few levels and learned some new skills from previous quests, so clearing this dungeon was a breeze. The boss fight, while annoying, it didn't pose much of a threat. With the first boss and Basil Joe already defeated, I was feeling unstoppable. A few moments of fighting was all it took and the boss was down for the count. Next up was the cave, the last dungeon in Remnant Wasteland to clear in order to gain access to the second zone of the game. Although the dungeon wasn't too hard, I started noticing how my damage was beginning to lack. The restriction of only using common weapons was starting to creep upon me, paired with the fact that I'm using common accessories which don't provide any stats. I was taking more damage than in previous fights in dungeons. But with that said, I still managed to clear it no problem. Entering the first dungeon in Solitary Sands, I immediately got a harsh reminder why I shouldn't spray and pray. As a single enemy almost obliterated me in seconds. It was like a hard slap on the face to remind me that I'm using only common rarity weapons and accessories. With that newly acquired information, well, I ignored it. I kept charging headfirst into enemy fire with not a single plan in mind. The fact that I refused to aim manually to hit weak spots only made this dungeon take longer. And speaking of long, the boss fight was easy, just annoyingly long and tedious. Shoot the boss, kill the ads that spawn, shoot the boss, rinse and repeat. I did die once, but it wasn't a roadblock, I just got revived and we killed it.
We're rich! We're rich! We're rich!
Once I looked over my newly acquired weapons and felt happy with what I had, it was time to take on the giant worm in Solitary Sands for parts. Though as you can see, I only had 5 rockets and about 300 shotgun shells, but instead of going back to buy more ammo like a same person, I decided to charge in with what little I had. And of course I made it harder on myself by refusing to aim manually at the worm's weak spot, the inside of its mouth. My only source of ammo during this fight was taking down the smaller worms that kept spawning during the fight with the giant worm, praying they'd drop some ammo so I could keep the fight going. But with enough patience, or sheer stubbornness, I managed to prevail. Next up was the lighthouse dungeon. There's not much to say about it, didn't die a single time, it was surprisingly easy for the level of the dungeon. Though as you can see, I never went back to the Glock to buy more ammo. Now I have even less, only a handful of shotgun shells and about 20 rockets for my rocket launcher. But stubborn as ever, I decided to take on the boss. Why? Honestly, I couldn't tell you even if you asked me. After a long overdue visit to the shop to empty my inventory of junk, those useless rare and epic weapons and accessories, who would want them anyway, right? Common quality is clearly better. And finally buy some much needed ammo for my new weapons, a common SPB potassium and Betelgeuse, this weapon on the screen. It was time to take on the next boss. Now this big boy, annoying to fight. He kept lunging at me non-stop, never giving me a moment's peace. To make matters worse, his weak spots, his horns, are such a pain to hit. Next we had to face 2 bosses, Mjolnir and the Mighty Chariot, to gain access to the final zone of the game. Mjolnir wasn't much to write home about. I spent most of the fight running around like a headless chicken and getting tossed around like a sack of potatoes by his rockets. But in the end he couldn't withstand the sheer undeniable power of common weapons and he came crashing down, much like me crashing into bed after a long day's work. Inside the Subway B dungeon nothing too noteworthy happened. Sure, my damage was terrible and I was taking more damage than I should, thanks to sticking with common weapons and accessories, but with enough patience I managed to push through. As for the boss, it wasn't anything special, basically just a beefed up version of a normal Acurachnid enemy. Bigger, stronger, and equipped with a health bar, which is apparently enough to qualify it as a boss. After dealing with Mjolnir and the Mighty Chariot, it was finally time to head into the last zone of the base game, the Forgotten Woods. But of course these 2 wannabe jet fighters had other plans. After getting one shot by one of them, I decided to use my teammates as distractions. True heroes, I know. Well, bolted like it was Black Friday at the stores. After zigzagging like that guy from Apocalypto, I finally managed to shake off the flying menace. Clearly fate wasn't on my side. Tales of my heroic tactical retreat has traveled the land fast and they've sent 2 more wannabe jet fighters who put me down yet again. I got revived only to be slapped down for my cowardice, but did that stop me? Nope. I kept running. There was no way we stood a chance against level 70 enemies when I was barely level 35, maybe 40. That's when Kure had chimed in, telling me to stop because we were obviously underleveled and armed with nothing but common weapons. Did I listen? Of course not. And so, unprepared as always, we marched into the Forgotten Woods. On our way to the Forgotten Woods, we had to clear a dungeon first. And here is when I thought twice about taking Kureha's advice to not go into the Forgotten Woods armed with nothing but common weapons and accessories. The difficulty curve hit me like a brick to the face. If I've struggled against any bosses earlier, these seemingly normal enemies were doing quadruple the damage, and they were tanky to boot. After dying, again, and again, and again, and again, and getting my head stuck in a chest, my friends were having the tea party in the other room, getting their sweet revenge for abandoning them earlier, as none of them wanted to come and revive me, so I stayed with my head in the chest to think of what I've done, like a kid being put in the corner of the room. Eventually, after many deaths, and I still refused to aim manually or farm for levels, we made it to the last boss before the Forgotten Woods, and I immediately regret coloring some parts of my clothes red, as this bull-like demon mistook me for a matador and charged me, treating me like I was playing bullfighting. After a long time back and forth, me and my teammates managed to make it dizzy enough from changing targets to the point where it fell over and died from exhaustion, leaving the door to the Forgotten Woods open. Arriving at the Forgotten Woods, we immediately start showing off with our common weapons, pawning some noobs and hiding our insecurities with sheer quantity over quality. After restoring my ego, we fought Jazz from Transformers, but after a few minutes of back and forth, the game caught on to my cowardly tactics, running away and using my teammates as distractions, as a cutscene interrupted the fight and told me to make a tactical retreat, leaving Kirito and Kurehe behind to deal with Jazz. But surprise, they ran away too, just like the cowards they are, leaving me to clean up their mess. When I returned to settle the score with Jazz, this time it was just me and my Alpha sis. I had high hopes for this fight, but those hopes were crushed in seconds after getting slapped twice and blown up once. Turns out this robot has magic tracking missiles and can shoot lasers like Iron Man. After my ego got shattered once more, I was too stubborn to admit defeat, so I went back and fought Jazz again, but I quickly made the mistake Basil Joe did in the beginning of the game, not learning my lesson and getting slapped again, this time 3 times and harder. Jazz has had enough of my shit and told me to get lost, but I didn't listen. Without farming or any plan in mind, I went back. After a long 7-minute fight, in sliding between his legs to reach his weak spot and avoid his lasers and rockets, we finally put an end to Jazz and sold him for parts. After coming back home, Kirito and Kurehe were clearly butthurt about me and my Alpha sis beating Jazz without their help, so they challenged me to a duel. Being the brave hero I am, and definitely not someone who's run away from fights before, I accepted to fight them alone. But of course Kirito and Kurehe botched the duel and invited Yuki and Sinon to the fight. Despite the 4-on-1 odds, I crushed them all and once again asserted my dominance, sensing they were probably scheming a mutiny to take over the guild. After clawing my way through the last dungeon of the game and dying over and over again, and still refusing to farm or aim manually at weak spots, we finally made it to the gate separating us from the second to last boss. But of course, plot twist, we needed 3 key cards scattered across the world. After taking down the all-seeing eye, the Jazz wannabe, and the mutated lizard, we grabbed their key cards and headed back to the locked gate. But on our way, who should show up but Basil Joe? Still after my Alpha sis, the guy just couldn't take a hint, so I slapped him down again and reminded him who's boss. With that nuisance dealt, we returned to the locked gate, But oh no, it was just version 2. Apparently selling some of him for parts didn't sit well with him. He was back for revenge, bigger, badder, and bulkier than ever. Too bad for him because we sold him for parts again. And with that, the path to the final boss was open. After putting on my nerve gear and diving into the death game, I checked my equipment to make sure I was as ready as I could have been with my common weapons and accessories. My nerves were through the roof and oh, are you serious? The last boss of the game died faster twice than fighting some of the other bosses. After a very quick and easy fight, my friends knew that I'd run away after the boss managed to hit me hard enough to almost kill me. So Zeliska took it upon herself to take the hit for me, saving me, but in the process dying in the real world as she was wearing a real nerve gear. Spoilers, duh. With my friends scolding me and telling me not to run again, I stayed and finished the job, atoning for my sins and killing the last boss of the game. So, can you beat Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet using only common weapons and accessories? Yes, you can. Keep in mind that I was also not aiming at weak spots for non-boss enemies and I never farmed for levels. With that said, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, as I have other challenges lined up for the future. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a good one. Bye bye.